How's it going, Bill?
That's going great. Another season.
Yeah.
Trying
So, you ready for this season? I mean, the season starts in what, 4 days?
Yeah, this Thursday.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So, we wanted to do a show to just kind of up the ante, I guess, of things, and Bill was dead set on doing this as a video. I
Yeah.
was like, okay.
Last year we did audio. This year I said, hey, why not? Let's do video. Let's try it. So we'll see how it works. You know, there's going to be some ups and downs, I'm sure, in this first couple of videos, but we'll see.
Yeah, we're doing our best, so please don't kill us as of right now. But if you have suggestions or things like that, please let us know in the comments, and we'll try and take those into consideration. Now, one thing that cannot be taken into consideration is the shininess of my glasses. Sorry, you just can't look into my eyes. That's just the way it is. All right, so in this first segment, basically we're going to grade all of the drafts and just kind of give a rundown of how we thought everyone fared in the draft from top to bottom.
This is the draft show. Pelton graded everybody except for himself, and then I graded him, so there's no bias or anything.
Right. All right, so first up is Steel Curtain, which I gave him a B+ at first, but I'm really feeling like a B. It was a solid draft. He has two good starting running backs in Foster and Richardson. And then I thought that DeMarco Murray as a 3 is a really good value because if he's healthy, he produces. You know what I mean? So if he can get on the field and obviously he's the starter, he's going to get all the opportunities. So if he's able to stay on the field the whole season, he could actually produce like a #1 running back. And then he has Fitzgerald and then Torrey Smith, who I thought was another great deal. You know what I mean? Right there, because he's in his 3rd year as a wide receiver, and then also he's like basically their only option. That Baltimore really doesn't have nothing else. Dennis Pitta went down. I mean, they have Ray Rice and Torrey Smith, so obviously he's going to get a lot of opportunities. The Bears defense should be good as usual. I thought that Olsen at tight end was another good pickup. And then as much as I don't really want to admit all this, but I think Kaepernick will be good this season. Not great, but I think he'll be good because of his running ability.
That's a touchy subject for me.
Well, go ahead, talk to us.
No, you know how it is. I don't know. I think 49er fans are just blown way out of proportion. We haven't seen him for a full season yet.
This is true. I just think that
I'll give him
quarterbacks who run, you know what I mean, are gonna be able to do well.
I agree. It's the season of the running quarterback. It broke out last year, and it's going to continue on this year. I think defenses are going to be better suited for it this year than they were last year, but nonetheless, I don't know. I'll give him that he took him to the Super Bowl, but I think a lot of people have been looking at game tapes, and I just don't think he's going to be as great. I mean, I've been hearing things like the best quarterback in the NFL and tossed around, and I just don't see how you can say that yet.
Well, you know what I heard that was ludicrous was someone was like, he's the next Steve Young. What?
Yeah.
What did you say?
Yeah. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. So.
Hey, last time I checked, Steve Young had threw like what 5, 6 touchdowns in the Super Bowl, right? He had one chance, and he got there. MVP threw 5, 6 touchdowns, broke records, right? That's what he did in the Super Bowl. Because Kaepernick didn't look that great in the Super Bowl, especially the first half. They looked like trash. But anyway.
But yeah, on to that subject.
That's a different subject. And then so we'll move on to number 2, the Gauchos.
Yes, her name.
Gauchos.
This is the former Tutu tackling Tebow fan.
Yeah.
A mouthful. Her name, once she changes it, which she hasn't done yet, is changing to Gaucho Mom. And
okay.
Mom, because her son plays for the El Capitan Gauchos.
El Capitan.
So, all right.
Okay, so whoever, everybody knows who we're talking about here.
Yep.
um, rated this draft actually. Unfortunately, this was the lowest rated draft, so got a C. And CJ Spiller is the first pick. Awesome. You have Aaron Rodgers as your starter at quarterback, so you'll be good to go there. But the problems mounted really early in the draft. It was weird because when we were kind of looking at this draft, we were like, the picks up top weren't good, but the picks in the second half of the draft were really good values. So, but unfortunately, in the first like 6 to 8 picks, you're picking all your starters. You know what I mean? So if you're not doing well there, it's going to be hard. So Monte Ball is your second running back. He looked better earlier, but he really didn't play well during the preseason, and now he's not even listed as the starter. And it looks like Ronnie Hillman is entrenched, you know what I mean, as at least getting some play time in their backfield. So that's going to make it hard because basically beyond that, she doesn't really have any much running back depth. And then you have Cobb and Amendola, who I think both could be number ones, but we got to make sure that Amendola actually stays on the field. I put this down that Vernon Davis could be the steal of this year's draft because he could possibly put up numbers like a number 2, wide receiver, or maybe even borderline number 1 wide receiver
All
because
right.
of the position that he's playing.
On that note, Vernon Davis, I think has a very good chance of being the number one tight end of the NFL season, just based off the fact that he's going to start in the slot in some formations. Like he's basically going to be a wide receiver in certain formations.
Yeah,
So you're basically getting a tight end / wide receiver out of just a tight end spot.
and that's why I think it could be big. So
Now, granted, I will say this: I don't like where she drafted him.
yeah, it was kind of high, but
Round 3.
yeah, and I think that's what eats into the running back depth or wide receiver depth or lack thereof. You know what I mean? Because you pick this person so early.
My thing with
So
her draft, like you were saying, she had not that great of a first half, but a good second half. So her first half wasn't that great, but then she rattles off Ben Tate and Pierre Thomas in rounds 13 and 14.
those are good picks.
Those are great picks. But if she would have 2 back-to-back good running back picks in her first 6 rounds, 7 rounds, we'd be talking a different story about it.
Yeah, for sure.
But instead, she pulled that trigger at the end of the draft.
Well, things happen. What can you do? Because it's over now. All you can do is be like, waiver wire, where are you? I need you. All right, so SOS is up next. He picked third, gave him a B. Solid draft. Got a big time player in Matt Ryan, and I think Matt Ryan is just getting started as far as like his value. You know what I mean? I think that he'll be able to improve on what he did last year. Combination of Ray Rice, Chris Johnson, and Darren Sproles. I think that's a nice trio of running backs. Got a backup in Fred Jackson, but to me that seems almost like a wasted pick. You know what I mean? Like,
I agree.
so, and then Jonathan Stewart, he's on the PUP list. So when I wrote this, he wasn't on the PUP list, but now he's on the PUP list. So now he's not playing for 6 weeks. So there goes another pick that was wasted. You know what I mean? I thought it was wasted just because of the backfield committee. Both you have 2 running backs that don't produce that much, so then how does that help you? You know what I mean? But now the D'Angelo Williams pick is actually pretty decent because now you have at least a number 1 starter who's going to get touches. You know what I mean? And is not going to share with Jonathan Stewart. Demaryius Thomas, he will be the best Broncos wide receiver. Period. I'm just putting that out there. And Antonio Brown is the number 1 receiver in Pittsburgh. And he has put up numbers similar to Mike Wallace. While Mike Wallace has the name, Antonio Brown's been able to put up the numbers the last few years. And he's a complete wide receiver, so I think he's a very good number 2. Josh Gordon, I think, is going to be awesome. for Cleveland once he comes off this suspension. Was he suspended 2 games, 3 games, something like that? But I think once he comes back, he'll be really good. Um, Witten is a great, solid tight end who's usually consistent, gets catches, and I think the Seahawks defense will be the number 1 defense in the league. And so I thought this was a solid draft.
I agree. I think we didn't have a Beanie Wells this year, so.
Okay, we'll get to who. I mean, I'm gonna put that in later. Who I think this year's Beanie Wells is. But no, we didn't have a Beanie Wells because Beanie Wells got drafted. What? He got drafted at the end of the first round, or was it the end of the second round last year?
It was the end of the first. It was his first pick.
Man, terrible. Mm-hmm. Anyway, we're not here to talk about Beanie Wells. Moving on. With pick number 4, Bull-Bound Broncos was able to get probably who I think is like almost one of the best players on his team in Alfred Morris. So Frank Gore will be solid again this year. I hated on him last year, and he produced. So I really don't see how he won't do the same. He's just someone who I've always had question marks about, but I think he'll play well again. Then you got Alfred Morris, who I see putting up very similar numbers to what he had last year. I think that's his cap. You know what I mean? Like around those numbers. Maybe he'll have another touchdown or 2, but 1,600 yards is a lot. So I think even if he had 1,400 yards and the same amount of touchdowns, that's really what you can expect out of him. You know what I'm saying? And then Le'Veon Bell looked to be like he could be something. I thought he was drafted too early, in the 3rd round. But then Liz Frank, and then now it's all bad. That's like they're saying 6 to 10 weeks, right? But the thing is, the reality is most of the people that we see with the Liz Frank injury, they don't play the rest of the season. Santonio Holmes, Maurice Jones-Drew, Darren McFadden, these people get it. Wrap. You're not playing. So we'll see if he's able to come back from that, but that really hurts his running back depth at that point. This is where I thought this draft kind of like fell apart. The wide receivers, you got Mike Wallace as a number 1, but I'm not sure that he's even a top 15 wide receiver this season. Maybe. We'll see how this Dolphins offense, they spent a lot of money in the offseason. I just don't know that's really going to pay off. And I have several bold predictions kind of throughout this whole thing, but I think T.Y. Hilton will be the draft bargain here, and he will outperform his 6th-round placement, and I think he'll actually outperform Mike Wallace. So the rest of the wide receivers are pretty atrocious, except for Hopkins, who I think you got some good upside in and could produce as a wide receiver number 2. The best pick that he had right here is in round number 2, selecting Jimmy Graham, because Jimmy Graham can help out for the deficiencies in these other positions because he's that good and he's that much better than everyone else who plays at the tight end position. I mean, there are a few players who maybe can rival him in scoring, maybe, but for the most part, who most of the people have, he'll have an advantage every single week at this position. He got Prater, who's going to be a really good kicker. You kick for a high-octane offense, then either you're going to get a lot of extra points or a lot of field goals. And then the 49ers defense, they're a defense to when it comes to fantasy and reality, it doesn't line up very much because from a reality standpoint, their defense could be the best defense in the league. But from a fantasy standpoint, they're top 10, but like 7, 8, 9, 10, top 10. Because they just don't seem to get a lot of turnovers. And that's the name of the game in fantasy, is turnovers.
Pick 6.
Yeah, you need picks, you need fumble recoveries, you need sacks. That's the stuff you need. And the 49ers defense is great. but they just don't seem to get a lot of turnovers. That's why the Patriots defense was ranked number 2 last year, and their defense let up so many yards and and quite a bit of scoring. But they had a lot of interceptions. They had a fair amount of sacks, and you know what they had was a lot of return defensive touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway, do you have anything to say about that, sir?
No, I agree. I think his draft was decent. I think his draft was better than his draft was last year. So I will say this about the Le'Veon Bell pick. We drafted the week before he got hurt.
I put third round was too high before he got hurt. And that's why I didn't draft him.
I agree.
I thought it was too high.
I agree it was too high of a pick. It probably should have been like a 4th round. But like I said, he got hurt like the week after we drafted.
This is true. He did get hurt a week after we drafted, and things happen. But still, I just think that you probably could have drafted here. Let me look at something. Let me just look at this round 3 right here. Should I share it on the screen here? Look,
sure.
So we can. I'll just make this point. Here we go. Let's see. Screen share. Boom. Here we are. Oh, did it do it? All right. Oh, wrong screen share. Here we are. Is that it?
Yep, that's it.
All right, so here we are. We're in round 3, right? Now look, this is all I'm saying is we're going down. You have Le'Veon Bell right there, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then look at the running backs there. I mean, to me, Lamar Miller's even money with Le'Veon Bell. But look at Reggie Bush. Tell me that you don't know, like, Reggie Bush and the offense that he's in will outscore Le'Veon Bell. And he's less of a risk because at least you have 2 years of solid running back evidence from Reggie Bush.
And if you look at right there at the very first running back in round 4,
David Wilson, who is another better risk because at least you have a body of work to go off of and you know what you're getting. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So that's just where I just thought that this was not that great of a pick, and that's just how I saw it. That's it.
All right.
Anyway, moving on. Game time. So I gave him a B, and again, it's like there was. Even the people who got C's, to be honest, it's not like your draft was terrible. No one had like a terrible draft. But Cam Newton, taking a risk on Cam Newton, I thought was great. And we kind of discussed this at the draft that, he's the 4th rated quarterback. So, it's weird that people aren't wanting to draft him any earlier. But then backing him up with Tony Romo, I thought was an excellent choice. And then therefore now, even though you're slightly taking some risk on Cam Newton that high, you have a backup that can easily play and will produce number 1 numbers. You got LaShawn McCoy, who will be your number 1 fantasy who I think will be the number 1 fantasy running back this year. Crazy. I just believe in the Eagles offense, even though I'm a Dallas fan. But Maurice Jones-Drew can be a solid number 2. But that's kind of iffy. We'll see if he stays on the field. Now, the Eddie Lacy pick looked good because he looked good in that preseason game that week that we drafted. But then also now his competition that they brought off the PUP list just got hurt and he's done for the season. So now Eddie Lacy has his job wrapped up. So he's the number 1 for Green Bay, which now will turn out to be probably a number 2 running back. So if Maurice Jones-Drew doesn't quite work out, Eddie Lacy will probably be able to be a starter. Brandon Marshall as the number 1 is good. I thought actually his wide receivers are all actually pretty good, even though the rest of these people are all number 2s, but I thought they were all good. Steve Smith, Wes Welker, and Stevie Johnson. So they're all good. Tony G is going to be solid, but I thought drafting him in the 4th round was unbelievably high. And I think that some of Tony G's touchdowns will actually go to Steven Jackson. So that's where I think like his value is to me is not even as high as it was last year. But it is what it is. I don't know why you drafted Antonio Gates. I didn't get I didn't understand that at all. Janikowski, I'm assuming you wanted a Raider on your team, so you went with that. But the Cardinals defense, yeah. Now that was an excellent pick, and I think they're on to do big things. I think they're a top 5 defense, and you got them in the 13th round, way after people had picked up all these other defenses that will probably score comparable to what the Cardinals are. So you were able to keep building your team while other people had already wasted picks on like kickers and defense that early.
Real quick to interject, I agree. The Cardinals defense, I don't care what anybody says, Patrick Peterson, the defense was good last year. Patrick Peterson put up points last year, and now guess how many quarterbacks are on that team this year? 1. Not 3 like last year, 1. So guess what? The offense is actually going to be able to hold the ball longer than they did last year, which means the defense is not going to be on the field as much, which means the defense is going to be fresher, which means when they are on the field, they're going to do big things. They scored a ton of defensive points last year. They had a ton of picks and picks for touchdowns. Patrick Peterson's an all-star. He's a stud.
Well, and then too is to their return game, and then you got what's that guy, Tyrann Mathieu? You know what I mean? He's going to be on the other part of their return game. You know what I mean? And he's not. Other than that, he's going to make their defense better too. So I'm just like, their defense looks like ready to roll. You know what I mean? Ready to roll.
This is the defense I wanted, and unfortunately, he picked them up right before it came to me. So that's why I didn't.
Yeah, I feel you. Because if you look at the draft, I drafted the Patriots defense next because I wanted the Cardinals defense. I wasn't actually going to draft the Cardinals and the Patriots defense, and then that way I could just have a little flex because I really didn't like all the players that were left, but he picked them up right before I could. So, and then we will switch over to Bill so that he can tell us how I did.
That's right. You were next, huh? I forgot. All right, so Pelton, first name greatest. Pick number 1, Calvin Johnson. This started off the back-to-back wide receiver pick because obviously you're going to do mine next. I think Calvin Johnson was probably the best thing you could go with in round 1. Why fall into the trap of picking up a tier 2 running back as your first pick when all the top tiers are already gone, considering we're a keepers league? So I liked the Calvin Johnson pick. That was a great pick. Drew Brees, I think it's a great pick. You know my thoughts on Drew Brees. I love him. So I think maybe you could have waited till the 3rd round on him. But either way, Reggie Bush I like. I had Reggie Bush on my team last year. I had him on my team before. Especially for not picking up your first running back till the 3rd round. I think Reggie Bush was a good deal. Marcus Colston, I'm in love with the quarterback wide receiver combo. I don't know how well Marcus Colston's going to do this year, considering Drew Brees spreads the ball out a lot because he's a good quarterback. But I still think having him on your team is a solid shot. I don't know, maybe round 4 is maybe 1 round too high, but either way, it's a good pickup. Round 5, this round kind of upset me because you picked up the player I was going to pick up that round, and Chris Ivory. I hate the Jets. I think they're horrible. I mean, he's arguably the worst team or second worst team in the NFL this year. But Chris Ivory is a number 1 running back over there, period. He's it. So I think he's great to have as a number 3, number 4 running back on your squad. You can easily start him in your flex spot depending on your matchup that week. Deshaun Jackson, getting him in round 6 I think was good. I think he probably should have went for people in round 5. But he didn't. And round 6 I think he's going to be good. He's the number 1 over there. Round 7, Darrell Richardson, the other pick that pissed me off because, once again, the round when it's coming forward and you're drafting right before me, you get him. And I was going to pick him up in that round. He is the number 1 over there. And he showed glimpses of greatness last year. So I think that'll do nothing but get better. This is where it gets kind of iffy for me a little bit. Tavon Austin's an unknown, and you don't even really know how the quarterback situation over there is going to pan out 100% yet. Jermichael Finley, I think, is good, but I think that was a little early for him in round 9. Now, Michael Vick in round 10, as far as quarterbacks go, was probably the steal of the draft in the quarterback spot. Last year, I think it was Tony Romo in round 11, I believe, is when Romo went last year. This year, I think it's probably Michael Vick in round 10 for quarterbacks. I mean, we know how much I dislike Michael Vick from last year. But let's be honest, Michael Vick is a quarterback that could start on a fantasy team, period. And on top of that, you have Drew Brees as your number 1, so and you're backing up Drew Brees with Michael Vick. So I think he's solid, especially in round 10. Kenbrell Thompkins, I don't. He's an unknown again. I don't think anybody else in the entire draft knew who the hell he was. But granted, that being said, you left and you were drafting via text after round 10. So I'll give you that. But I think he could have been your 15th round easy because people wouldn't have even thought of him. Jordan Cameron, I like. I'm in love with Cleveland this year. That's right. SOS, your team, the Browns. I'm in love with them this year. Like Drew Carey says, Cleveland rocks. And it's going to rock this year. It's gonna. So I'm cool with the Jordan Cameron round 12. Patriots defense. Another one of those defenses that puts up points. Like you said, Cardinals, Patriots, they're good defenses. They make it a lot of points scored against them, but they seem to get a lot of defensive touchdowns. So, Greg Zuerlein, kicker. Kickers are 14th, 15th round, and Greg Zuerlein, I think what they call him, Legatron last year. So I think that's a solid kicker to have. And bar none, the best pick of the draft. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care if people are talking about Arian Foster number 1, AP number 2, whatever. Best pick of the draft, round 15, Danny Woodhead. Ryan Matthews is going to get hurt. We know it. It's going to happen. Danny Woodhead is going to be the number 1 over there at some point in time this season. And you got him in the 15th round. So I graded your draft overall a B.
Well, that's pretty much what I gave myself, and yeah, I don't know. I guess I could have drafted Kenbrell Thompkins later. I just saw what he was doing, and that basically he's going to be starting, so I just went ahead and got him. And then Tavon Austin was just a person that I thought, if you look at where Danny Amendola was on pace for last year, before he got hurt, he was playing as a number 1. And it wasn't that he was getting a lot of touchdowns. He was just getting a lot of receptions. So I just think that Tavon Austin can take that. But, yeah, B, that's good with me. That's about where I graded my draft. And the thing is, if I had to do it all over again, I would do it differently.
And I just to reinforce my Danny Woodhead thing, his ADP, his average draft position, is 130, and you got him pick 156. I say 156 technically if you look at the stats on the pick number, he was 146, but since we are a keepers league, there's 10 more picks that you got to add in there to that number. So technically, he was pick number 156 for us. So, and his average draft position is 130, and you got him at 156. That's 26 picks after he normally goes in most drafts. So, best pick of the draft, bar none.
Well, thank you.
I mean, it's the 15th round, so people can say whatever they want to say. I don't care. So, I think the 15th round went great for everybody.
You know what's crazy is last year, I think I picked Danny Amendola as the last pick. All right, which is crazy because now he's going in the third, fourth round.
Because he's in the Patriots.
I know. So is Kenbrell Tompkins. Ha ha. But anyway. But all right. So the next team up, they drafted 7th, was Venom. RG3 should be a dynamic number 1. That's how I put it on my paper. The only question is, can he stay healthy? I think that he can. I just don't think that they can run the same offense that they ran last year and afford to have him take as many hits as he was taking last year. So with that being said, it's kind of curious. Is he going to be able to put up the same type of numbers that he put up last year? You know what I mean? Because he had a lot of designed runs built into the offense. But maybe those runs will translate over into passing yards. But if they translate into passing yards, then maybe there's a slight decline in numbers. You see what I'm saying? Because we're not. Was it 1 for 25 or 1 for 20? But as far as like calculating out, so we'll see how that works. I would have been cooler with the RG3 pick if you would have got a better backup. But I mean, Carson Palmer is highly possible for him to put up big numbers. He has a legitimate number one wide receiver, and he threw for more than 4,000 yards last year, and he didn't have no one to throw to. I mean, he was on the Raiders. Woo! Anyway, you got Adrian Peterson already, and then you added Lamar Miller, who I like, and I think he's the more talented running back, but the question is he going to be able to take on the role? Because as of right now, he's splitting time, and I don't think they're going to announce that someone's number one. Rashard Mendenhall is someone who I actually don't like, but I think he may pay off fantasy dividends. If he can stay healthy, it looks like they're going to run him. So, and with the fact that now you have a quarterback who can give you time, they'll probably be able to run the ball. And he looked actually pretty decent in the preseason. Joseph Randle, who you switched out for Lance Dunbar, that was an excellent move because Joseph Randle was really buried on the depth chart. He hasn't really panned out the way that they were helping. If Rashard Mendenhall can stay healthy, I think you can give him similar numbers to Sean Green last year, so maybe he'll be a top 20 back, which will be good for a number 3. Dez Bryant, Andre Johnson, and Dwayne Bowe, I will go on record that they will finish at least, all 3 of them will finish in the top 15. I think it's a high possibility that all 3 finish in the top 10, which is amazing that you're going to pick 3 wide receivers and they're all going to finish in the top 10. Harvin and Blackman, I didn't like them being drafted on the same team, so I just thought it was a lot of weight to carry. You drop Blackman, you got Darius Hayward-Bay, who that's another person who I really like because he was actually doing quite well last year, and then it seemed like for some reason they started kind of taking him off the field. I'm not sure why, but it is what it is. Sudfeld is a steal at tight end, regardless if Gronkowski starts or not, because this traditionally is a 2 tight end offense. So Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez were both able to put up good numbers together. So even if Gronkowski comes back, Sudfeld, at least for the beginning of the season, will start in the Gronkowski role, and then he can switch over to the Aaron Hernandez role. So I think that he's a great pick, and that's probably someone who you could have drafted later because it seemed like no one really knew who he was. But I will say that he's going to outweigh where he got drafted. Your kicker and your defense are good, but obviously you traded your defense like 2 or 3 times, so we don't even know who your defense is. But I gave this draft a B, and I thought it was solid. So.
All right. So my draft, weighing in on my own draft. I agree 100% that Percy Harvin, I want it on my team because he's going to play this season at some point in time. I probably picked him up too high at 8, but I was afraid I wasn't going to get him. Now, unfortunately, he's starting the season on the PUP list, which means he won't even be anywhere until week 6 at least. And then we don't even know if he'll be there after that, right away. So that part kind of is a downer for me, and I got him around 8. So that was probably too high for him. Zach Sudfeld, I love him. Like I said, I think he was a steal for me. Granted, I probably could have got him in like the 12th round or the 13th round because, like you said, who's Zach Sudfeld? Nobody knows, So, but great pick for me. Justin Blackman, I agree. Mistake. I think I was a little frazzled in that round. I should not have picked him up. But I did drop him for Darius Hayward-Bay, who's on the Colts now. So, which is going to be pressuring T.Y. Hilton all season for the number 2 role there. So I swapped him out, and I have only picked up 1 defense. I drafted the Rams in the 13th spot. I picked up Pittsburgh, and drop the Rams. So, and yeah, that's, I think if I could have done anything different, it would have been to not draft Andre Johnson on the second pick. It would have been to draft Jimmy Graham there. But I'm perfectly fine with having Andre Johnson as my number 2 wide receiver. Who wouldn't be? Other than that, it would have been to push Zach Sudfeld about 3 rounds farther down my depth chart when I drafted him, and to have not drafted Joseph Randle because he's the number 3 now, which at the time he was fighting for the new number 2 spot when we drafted, but Lance Dunbar's the number 2 now. So, and it would have been to not draft Justin Blackmon. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I saw both those issues. So Joseph Randle's not on my team. Lance Dunbar is, which is the number 2, and Justin Blackmon's not on my team. Darius Haywood-Bay is. So.
All right. I gave the Knights a C plus. I thought Matt, and they picked 8. So I thought Matt Stafford, who's their number 1 quarterback, was a deal in the 7th round. I thought Joe Flacco was a waste of a backup because while he's a great player as far as when it comes to the playoffs, he sucks when it comes to fantasy. He's always finished outside of the top 15. So I'm like, what? I don't know. I don't know. He's a spot starter. He sucks on the road. He always puts up terrible numbers. So you just gotta hope that they're playing at home when Matthew Stafford's on his bye week. Whatever. Well, I don't know. Anyway, I'm moving on. And then we'll go to who I thought was bar none like a great pickup in the first round. And if any other running back would have got drafted before Des Bryant or Calvin Johnson, I would think it would be Matt Forte. He seems that he's going to be used running the ball, but then also in the passing game, he seems like he's going to be phenomenal. He looks great in the preseason, and you just figure that they're going to keep trying to use him that way, you know what I mean, if they can. Because the offensive line looks like it still can't pass block that well, so getting like little dinks and dunks to Matt Forte or design screens and stuff will take a lot of pressure off that defense. So with him and Lynch, that gives him a great starting tandem. But, from there it kind of goes downhill. You got Ben Jarvis Green-Ellis, Kendall Hunter, Jonathan Dwyer, he got cut. Yeah, they're terrible. His trio of wide receivers, on the other hand, are actually quite good. I don't think quite as good as Venom's trio, but this is another good trio. So you got Julio Jones, Reggie Wayne, and Eric Decker. If Wes Welker wasn't on the team, then Eric Decker would be a much better pick, but a lot of Eric Decker's touchdowns and catches are between 1 to 15 yards depth, and that's the place where Wes Welker is going to play, so he's going to just eat in. They're going to cannibalize each other's numbers. So, Mike Williams, this is another thing. Mike Williams was actually pretty decent last year. He was like a top 20 wide receiver. So to get him late, and Miles Austin, who I think will benefit from the fact that there's so many good players at the other receiving positions from Dallas. Here we go. This is the worst pick of the draft in the 6th round. Dennis Pitta. There's 2 reasons this is the worst pick. The number 1 is, why are you drafting him in the 6th round? Like, that makes no sense. Like, none. What? Dennis Pitta in the 6th round? You probably could have got him like 10th round. Anyway, but to stack on top of that, then he was just a waste because he's not even playing. He's borderline like whether they're going to put him on IR or not. So at best, you could be like, oh, maybe he'll come back week 8 or week 10. But you drafted him as a starter in the first 6 rounds. Not going to say anything else about that. I'm done with that. And then Brandon Pettigrew, he's a decent starter at tight end, but I don't know. I think you're going to have to look around and find something else. And then you got Cincy's defense, and I think they'll be strong this season. So I gave this one a C+, really for the lack of depth at running back is just is not good at here, and then also the fact that the tight end position is going to be a definite mismatch every week for him. So that's like pretty much where I graded it.
All right. This is why you graded it a C plus. I'll tell you right now. Eric Decker. First of all, Reggie Wayne should have been drafted before Eric Decker. All right. I don't care who you are. Eric Decker's number 3 on that team now. Reggie Wayne's the number 1 on his team. But either way, Eric Decker I do not like in the 3rd round. BenJarvus Green-Ellis, the law firm, he's going to lose his spot to Giovanni Bernard. I mean, let's just be honest. See, Pitta won't even return till at minimum week 9, but it'll probably be more like November, December era when he comes back. Bengals, good defense, but round 9, you could have waited on that one. Kendall Hunter, non-factor. Joe Flacco, to me, horrible. Jonathan Dwyer, like you said, he just got cut. And thank God you drafted Brandon Pettigrew in the 15th round because you don't have a tight end. So that's why he got a C, right there. So I do like the fact that he has Marshawn Lynch, Matt Forte, and then Julio Jones. But in my opinion, Julio Jones and Reggie Wayne will be his number 1 and number 2, and he'll be starting Miles Austin in his flex long before he ever starts Eric Decker.
Well, you know what? And I'm going to bring this up again with another player, but Julio Jones. See, the problem with him is you got to try and figure out when is he going to be good, because he's going to be explosive, but he's not going to be explosive every game. And it's from like it's like oh, well, I'm playing on the road, so I can go, and then at home, Roddy White's going to go. So then you're kind of starting him every other game. So now how many starts are you really getting out of him? Maybe like 8, and then you got to draft him that early, and you're only going to get 8 solid starts, and then the other starts are going to be crappy, like 50 yards or less. You know what I mean? That's the problem with him is it's hard to figure out. He's going to put up the numbers overall, but it's hard to figure out which week is going to be the week that he's going to be good because he's not consistent. He's not consistently catching 100 yards. I mean, even if you didn't get the touchdown, if you could get 80, 100 yards a game, then at least we could count on that. But in the games where he's not on, he's really not on. And I'm talking like 50 yards or less. And he did that at least like 5 times last season. So that's what's going to make it hard to just plug him, boom, as a number 1 wide receiver. So anyway, that just adds in as to why it's a C. The Avengers, I gave them a B. I thought that this draft was solid. Again, man, there's a lot of solid drafts. Tom Brady, obviously, you already had him as a keeper. He's a number 1 quarterback. I don't care. People say what they want, but until someone actually knocks off the Patriots and knocks off their offense, who look like they've been killing people in the preseason already, you know what I mean? Until it actually is done, I'm like, everybody who hates on the Patriots, shut up. You see Dallas, I'm not a Patriot fan or nothing like that, but they've proven that they win. And they've proven that Tom Brady is going to put up numbers, period. Even with having a great rushing offense last year, Tom Brady still put up numbers. So, period. I think he's a great keeper. You were able to get back Stephen Ridley, who, from a running back standpoint, he reminds me of Arian Foster type consistency, where you can count on him for at least 12 to 16 points a game on a low end. And it's awesome to have a player at any position where you can just be like, I can put you in, and every week I know you're going to produce, and I don't have to worry about low games. Steven Jackson, I had to do a little bit of research to kind of see where I wanted to place him. You know, he's been averaging 180 points, you know, over the last like 2 or 3 years, and then so I went back and looked at Michael Turner, and obviously last year doesn't really count because he had like a down year, but the previous years he had like right around 200. So you figure you average that out, Steven Jackson may get somewhere between a maximum of maybe 190 points to maybe low end, maybe like 175. So that puts him in maybe a top 15 running back, maybe. So I don't know. It's hard to place him because he may be really good, but at the same time he may not be that good. But obviously he's a decent number 2. I think he'll finish somewhere between 11th and 15th. Long story short, you got solid starters, but you do have Ryan Matthews and Ahmad Bradshaw, Who? Ryan Matthews, even when he has been healthy, has been crappy. To say, I mean, I can't really say anything. Ahmad Bradshaw on the other end is playing in a great offense, and when he's on the field, he produces. So you may be, I mean, who knows? Maybe Ryan Matthews will put together a good season. He's going to have the opportunities to do it. It's just that can he stay on the field? Can he produce? So we'll see. But I think that it'll probably be more Ahmad Bradshaw who'll be able to be your number 3. You got a solid number 1 in Roddy White, and then Victor Cruz and Pierre Garçon, excellent number 2s, because either of them could really produce as number 1s. So we'll see, and maybe both of them might actually break out this year because they both kind of had down off years last year, so maybe they'll come back strong. Owen Daniels, I think, is a great number 1, good tight end. Kyle Rudolph, he's another one of those people who is like, man, he's like boom or bust. Either he catches a touchdown or he gets 0. And he did that to people several times last year. He did that to me. That's why I dropped him, because I couldn't stand that. Oh, either I'm going to catch a touchdown or I got nothing. I won't catch nothing. I'm like, that's just terrible. So that's why someone like him, to me, doesn't even really deserve to be drafted. To me, he should come off the waiver wire somewhere when he proves himself. I thought that, let's see, you got the Broncos D. You got Gostkowski, good kicker, but the Broncos D looked better 3 weeks ago than they look now, because it seems like they got injuries, and then obviously with the suspension of Von Miller, which was looming then, but is now for sure, it's going to change that defense phenomenally. So, I mean, that may actually help out the fantasy offensive starters for the beginning of the season until Von Miller comes back. So I gave it a B. I thought it was a solid draft. And with everyone, it seems like running back depth is questionable. You know what I mean? On most teams, there's question marks.
All right. I can agree. For me, I would put it at like a B minus, and I'll tell you why right now. Ryan Matthews, no faith whatsoever. No faith. I
know how you feel.
So, I mean, let's see. I think Pierre Garçon was a great pickup in round 6.
For sure.
For sure. I think Kyle Rudolph was a waste in round 7.
Yes.
In fact, if you ask me, I think your Owen Daniels that you got round 12 was more like a round 7 tight end pickup.
And he's the person you should be starting.
Yeah. Ahmad Bradshaw probably going to get hurt. Denver Broncos, way too high to pick that defense. Round 10.
What round?
Round 10.
Yeah, it is too high.
And round 11, you picked up Gostkowski. Maybe you wanted him. I don't know. But why would you ever pick up a kicker before round 14? There's no reason to. So that's 3 rounds too early on your kicker. But, on a good note, mark my words, by the end of the season, Michael Floyd will be starting in your flex spot. And
okay. Yeah, I could see that. I mean, he has a ton of potential, and the thing is, we just haven't, seen it yet. But he could be.
Carson Palmer threw for 4,000 yards on the Raiders. No offensive line. The Raiders. All right. This year he's playing for the Cardinals. He's throwing to Larry Fitzgerald. Midway through the season, Fitzgerald's going to be still a monster, but he's going to be getting double teamed all kinds. People are going to be keying on him. And Michael Floyd's going to see some opportunity. If he can stay healthy, he's going to see some opportunity on that team.
You mean something similar to how T.Y. Hilton took advantage of Reggie Wayne blowing up?
Exactly. So I think that was one of that's probably my second favorite pick in the 15th round is Michael Floyd.
Wow. I like that because that's deep. That's deep thinking right there.
So, anyways.
All right. So now we are on to our last analysis, which is the champion, starters in the game. As usual, his draft game is strong. And as usual, he's able to sniff out values of these people who are on the borderline of maybe being good, bad, maybe we'll see what happens, but he's able to usually sniff them out and find the values. So I gave him a B plus, which is pretty much like I thought it was just a little bit better than most people's drafts. Not phenomenally better, but I thought it was a little bit better. Now, this draft did start out with I think that to me, my only real issue with this draft, the majors issue, is the first pick at Peyton Manning. Nothing's wrong with Peyton Manning. It's not a problem like that he's gonna be your number one quarterback. My problem is that there was many other players that could have made your team better drafting there. And then the majors problem is you draft him as your first quarterback, but then there's still Drew Brees who will outscore Peyton Manning, Cam Newton who will outscore Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck and RG3 who will be equal, at least equal, probably better than Peyton Manning. So then if you look at where those people all got drafted after him, and some of them well after you drafted Peyton Manning. So I just didn't see what was the urgency to draft him right there. You know what I mean? Because you could have gotten someone of at least equal value 5 rounds later. So I just think because I don't know if you thought it was like an emergency thing to pick him up, but I just think you could have done better there. But that's being picky, at least in my eyes. So you already had Jamal Charles, which was already, I think he's going to be a monster. He's going to be easily top 5 running back this year. I also, as far as the wide receivers, I like the wide receivers. AJ Green is a solid number 1. Solid number 1. He's going to be in the top 5 wide receivers. You got Vincent Jackson. He's going to score top 10 numbers, but he's another one of those guys who's like, it's not even a home or away thing. It's more like, how good is this defense? And if this defense is too good, then I can't really play Vincent Jackson. And he had plenty of sub 5-point games. And that's terrible if this is your person who you're plugging in as your starter, because you really can't plug him in easily as your starter. So it's just a little bit hard there. And started the game, as usual, sniffed out the value, drafted David Wilson, who looked iffy, but looked like the one who was going to be the money, and Andre Brown maybe was going to take away some of his touchdowns, but Andre Brown is now hurt. He won't be back for 4 to 6 weeks. That's minimum, you know what I mean, if everything goes well. So now David Wilson's skyrockets because now he's getting all the goal line touches. He's a threat to break it anytime. So I thought that was awesome. And then you got Darren McFadden. And I put this, I said, imagine Darren McFadden stays healthy, and imagine the numbers he can put up. But then again, Darren McFadden's on the Oakland Raiders, so he's not going to stay healthy, and that team is terrible, and that, I don't know. I don't even know. I mean, then again, we go back to those questions of the lack of depth. Now, Gronkowski, whenever he returns, is the number 1 tight end in the league. So you get him in the 3rd round, and let's say he plays 10 weeks for you. Even at 10 weeks, he was what? Was he the number 2 last year? And only by a few points. So I think that was a good pick. Maybe a little bit too early, but then again, when he comes back, he's already practicing in full pads as of today. So he should probably be ready in the next few weeks. I'm assuming with your defense, you're just going to pick up a defense. I guess, and start them and drop them and pick them up, and you know that could work well. But at the same time, that could blow up in your face. But I think that overall, his draft was good, and I think he'll be competing again in the playoffs for the championship.
I agree. I there are a few things I didn't like about it, but for God's sakes, there's a method to his madness because he's always finishing towards the top. I mean, I don't know what to say. It's hard to judge him on certain things when he always seems to be finishing towards the top. The things I just don't like. I didn't like the number 1 Peyton Manning pick. I think he could have pulled the trigger on that like 4th round, 3rd round. McFadden, but then again, he did get McFadden in the 6th round. The problem is McFadden probably won't stay healthy because that offensive line can't block for anything. So, I mean, McFadden's always been a high risk, high reward. He's either going to get hurt or he's not going to get hurt and you're going to get some points. And so far in his career, he's just gotten hurt.
The only problem with that is we say high risk, high reward, but honestly, he's just high risk because he's had one season that he didn't even play the whole season that he did well in, and we're still trying to harken back to that, and that was like 2 years ago.
Yeah. And I am going to beat up on him a little bit for the fact that I just beat up on the Avengers for the same thing. He was the first person to pick up a kicker in round 10. Really? Round 10? Why? Just why? 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 Do you think Blair Walsh was going to get picked up? Yeah, why? So, and then another sore subject with me, your 11th pick, Eli Manning. If it wasn't for Eli Manning, I firmly believe you would have been talking about me as the the reigning champion of this league, but I had Eli Manning on my team last year. So it's a sore subject, but whatever. It's his backup. Wait, no, that is his quarterback, isn't it? No, he has Peyton Manning. So he has the Manning brothers on his team. I think he will drop Eli Manning before too long. And Jared Cook. Really? Jared Cook? It was the 13th round, so it's probably just a throwaway pick anyways.
I mean, he might. I mean...
No. This is my problem with Jared Cook, is you picked up Gronkowski well knowing, and you spent a high pick on him in round 3, well knowing that he's not going to start the season. I mean, there's a good chance that you may see him by week 3, week 4. There's a very good chance of that. Maybe even week 2. I mean, what's AP last year, Peyton Manning last year, RG3 this year. I mean, they're all like miracle injury cases. So you could see him by week 2, which is great. But you don't pick up another tight end until round 13 to start for you in the beginning of the season? And when you do, it's Jared Cook? Really? Look, you picked up look. You picked up Blair Walsh in round 10. That could have been your tight end pickup right there.
Okay, listen. This is the thing is Jared Cook does have a lot of upside. But to me, I'll just say this. This is what I'm gonna say. Zach Sudfeld, to me, should have been the pick because now all you're doing is saying, okay, well, this is the person I'm going to have, and then I'm going to substitute with the person who's taking their place. So, you probably get some sort of similar production, not necessarily Gronkowski production, but some similar production. So to me, that should have been the pick.
Yeah.
That's just how I see it.
I picked up Tyler Eifert in the 10th round. Instead of picking up Blair Walsh, you could have picked up Tyler Eifert.
Well, as you said, you know what I mean. There's obviously
he finishes in the top every year, so it's hard for me to bash him too much on it. But that's just how it is. I mean,
yeah.
Like I said, I mean, and then Pittsburgh, he doesn't even have him on his team anymore. Ronnie Hillman, he doesn't have him on his team anymore. So it is what it is.
Yeah, so that really completes our draft, like our in-depth draft analysis. I know it was long. Sorry. We did our best. But that completes, our in-depth draft analysis. I think at this point we are going to take a moment of silence.
No, not yet. Not yet.
All right.
Oh yes, baby! Oh yes, baby! This is August! Who's gonna step up? Step up! Step up! Step up!